They told me to leave. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were loud, but because of what they meant. Sorry, ma'am, this section is for invited guests only. Two guards stood in front of me, arms crossed, faces expressionless. I wasn't dressed fancy, just a worn khaki jacket, the same one my husband used to wear before every deployment. On its lapel sat a small silver medal, his medal. The one he never got to wear again. For a moment, I thought they were joking. But they weren't. Around me, families turned to watch, whispering as I tried to explain. "My son's graduating today," I said, voice shaking. "I just want to see him walk." The shorter guard avoided my eyes. "I understand, ma'am, but this area is reserved for dignitaries and VIP guests. Please step aside, dignitaries, VIPs." The words stung. My husband died defending people he'd never met. Yet somehow his wife wasn't important enough to watch her son graduate. I could have caused a scene. I could have shouted, but something inside me froze. So I stepped back, slowly, quietly. As I turned to leave, the crowd parted. The stadium lights flickered across faces, teachers, parents, even students, all pretending not to see. My chest ached, but I kept walking until I reached the parking lot. Then I sat in the car and let the weight of it all sink in. A medal. That's all it took to be unwelcome. I don't know how long I sat there before Ethan found me. His graduation gown still hung from his shoulders. His eyes were red. "They told me you left," he said, voice trembling. I nodded. "They asked me to." He looked down at the medal still pinned to my jacket. "Was it because of Dad's insignia?" I didn't have to answer. He already knew. We drove home in silence. That night I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A deep voice said, "Ma'am, this is Chief Ramos. We heard what happened." It took me a second to remember. Ramos, one of my husband's old teammates. He paused. "We're not letting this stand." I told him it wasn't necessary, that I didn't want trouble. But he said, "This isn't trouble. This is respect. We'll see you tomorrow." At dawn, I heard engines rumbling outside. 6 men stood by 2 trucks, all former SEALs, all men who'd served with Daniel. They looked older, but their presence was unshakable. Ramos handed me a small case with Daniel's name engraved on it. "This belongs to your son," he said. And we made some calls. "That school board will hear from us." Then he handed me an envelope, an invitation to a ceremony at the naval base. "They want to honor Ethan," he said. Word spread fast. By evening, people were talking. Photos, videos, questions. Why was that woman removed? Was it because of the medal? Within hours, it was everywhere. The same symbol that got me pushed aside was now at the center of national outrage. The next morning, I woke to hundreds of notifications. A video of the incident had gone viral. Me standing alone, the guards, the medal catching sunlight. The caption read, "She was asked to leave her son's graduation for wearing her late husband's SEAL medal." Millions of views, thousands of comments. The school's name was trending. Then a black SUV pulled up outside my house. A man in uniform stepped out. "Mrs. Porter, I'm Captain Lewis, Naval Public Affairs. We'd like to speak with you and your son." He explained that veterans groups, even national networks, were demanding an official response. "We'd like to honor your family publicly," he said. Days later, they held a press event at the school gates, the same place I'd been escorted from. But this time, there were no guards. Just reporters and flags waving in the breeze. I took the microphone, hands trembling. My husband served 15 years as a Navy SEAL. He missed birthdays and holidays because he believed in service. I was asked to leave my son's graduation for wearing his medal. But that medal isn't just medal and ribbon, and it's a story, a life, a sacrifice. You can remove a person from a seat, but you can't erase what they stand for. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Ethan stood beside me, his father's folded flag in his hands. And from the edge of the crowd, I saw them, the 2 guards. They approached, hats in hand. One of them said, "Ma'am, we were following orders." "But that doesn't make it right." I reached out my hand. "It takes strength to admit that," I said softly. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Ethan stood beside me, his father's folded flag in his hands. And from the edge of the crowd, I saw them, the 2 guards. They approached, hats in hand. One of them said, "Ma'am, we were following orders." "But that doesn't make it right." I reached out my hand. "It takes strength to admit that," I said softly. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, I was invited back to the school. I expected a simple handshake. Instead, the principal led me to a small garden near the auditorium. In the center stood a bronze plaque, the Porter Memorial Garden, dedicated to the families who stand behind every service member, and the courage it takes to keep believing. Beneath it, etched in brass, were the words, "Honor lives through those who remember." I didn't cry then. I just smiled because that garden wasn't about loss. It was about legacy, about the quiet power of being seen. Ethan began volunteering with military families, helping kids who'd lost parents in service. He said it made him feel close to his dad again. He told me once, "Dad's story isn't over, Mom. We're still writing it." He was right. Months passed. Letters kept coming. A woman wrote, "I used to hide my husband's dog tags when I went out. After seeing your story, I wear them again." Another from a soldier. "Your courage reminded me why I put on my uniform." And then one day, Chief Ramos brought me a small wooden box. Inside was an old patch, Daniel's, and a note in his handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. Don't let that day define you. Live loud enough for both of us." I read it over and over until the words blurred. Because we had lived loud. In our way, we'd made sure the silence didn't win. When a reporter asked if I'd forgiven the guards, I said yes. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about refusing to let bitterness write the ending. When she asked what I'd tell others who'd been disrespected, I said, "Stand tall. Not because you need to fight, but because you deserve to be seen." That line spread across the country. Veterans' families started repeating it, printing it, teaching it to their children. Months later, Ethan gave a speech at a youth conference. "My mom taught me that strength doesn't always wear a uniform," he said. "Sometimes it wears a medal, a smile, and a story the world needs to hear." When we drove home, he looked out the window and whispered, "Dad would have been proud." I smiled. "He is proud, sweetheart. He never left. He's just standing a little farther ahead." A few weeks later, I stood at Daniel's grave again. The air was still. The flag rippled softly above the headstones. I brushed away the leaves and whispered, "We're okay now. You'd be proud of what your story became." The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and sunlight. I closed my eyes and felt something. Peace. Because this story was never just about being asked to leave. It was about refusing to stay gone. Honor isn't something given by titles or sections or guards. It's carried by those who remember, and as I walked away, the medal on my jacket caught the sun one last time, not as a symbol of loss, but of everything we'd reclaimed: respect, dignity, love. Because in the end, honor doesn't fade. It lives quietly, in those who choose to remember, and in those who keep standing, even when the world tells them to essals.